As the title suggests, I don't think communism was given a fair chance in the world, and there are a few reasons, to my thinking behind this. One one was because of the state of Russia, the conditions in Russia before the communists showed up. Tsarist Russia, was an economically and technologically primitive and socially backward country. While during the Renaissance, while Europe was being transformed with technological, scientific, and intellectual revolutions, Russia was being held back under the thumb of the Mongol Golden Horde, and it took Ivan III independent. But by that time, Russia had missed the Renaissance. So during the 16 and 1700s, when we reach the colonial and early imperial age, Russia still had their mind state in the Dark Ages during like 900 to 1300 AD. So they never really developed an intellectual base. They developed very few technologies and adopted very few technologies ever since Catherine the Great put a hold on Peter the Great's policy of modernization and education of the Imperial Russian government. So come 1917, so come 1917, Russia had virtually no electricity infrastructure. They hadn't even adopted steam or coal engines yet, as serfs would have to pull and haul barges up and down rivers. Many would simply die. Many would simply fall down and die mid-haul, or if they were in torso harnesses, they'd all of a sudden just go limp and just hang there dead, like a puppet by its strings. Their economy was not even industrialized yet, like the rest of the world. They were still largely agricultural based. And during World War One in 1917, the Tsar Nicholas II was hoarding food from the people just to feed his army to fight the Germans. So we have people starving all over the country. People dying of primitive industry and agriculture. And the economy is extremely slow. So when the communists finally took power, they had a lot to do. They had so much to do to bring Russia simply up to the standard of the of about of the early 1900s. So when they finally dredged the ship of Russia out of the murky depths of poverty and despair, they had used up all their time, all their energy, all their former charisma and all that, just bringing Russia out, right, just recovering the ship, let alone then actually trying to sail it. Reason number two: Stalin. I'm just going to come out and say it. Stalin was crazy. He was nuts. He was so paranoid about everything that he may have won World War II, but he's also the reason why so many Soviets died died in World War II, as his paranoia peaked and culminated in the Great Purge, which was pretty much when he lobotomized the Red Army and the Soviet government, killing off, exiling, executing, and imprisoning government officials, generals and veteran officers, pretty much anyone who was competent. Pretty much anyone who was competent, he saw as a threat and got rid of them. So Stalin ruined the party. I mean, I think they were doing just fine. They were doing just fine from when the communists first took power to when Lenin died, which was, I think, a 2 or 4 year period when Lenin was premier of the Soviet Union. When Lenin was premier of the Soviet Union, Lenin's the title of his new policy, the New Economic Policy, I think, it was good. It reinstated some private property and allowed small businesses of 20 workers or less. But Lenin didn't live long enough for his policies to be enforced long enough to yield any real results. So in comes Stalin, and he blew up the party. And so a party that gets brain raped in the 1930s is not going to operate as well as it should. And so, if the government controls all the means of production, and Stalin made the government stupid, bad things are going to happen. The problem was not the ideology, it was the man who ruined it, the man who disfigured it. Reason number 3, they're military. Many say the Soviets had such a massive military and their military budget because they wanted to take over the world. That is probably one eighth true. The other, I mean, like 6/8 I think is because they were scared. They were terrified that after World War II, after losing over 10% of their population, they don't want anything like that. They don't want anything like that to ever happen again. Plus there was already an allied plan to invade Russia already. Operation Unthinkable, a name rightly earned. The Soviets had fought the Germans on land and in air for 4 years straight. I mean, 24 million casualties. So by the end of the war, right? So by the end of the war, when the Soviets find out that now the Allies, the United States and Great Britain, want to attack the Soviet Union, they're like, heck no, oh heck no, and so they had to do that. They had to put up a massive military for their own protection, and consequently, their military budget ate up so much of the Soviet economy that they had little money to spare to the actual people. Then there's this thing I heard where the Nazis killed 60 million people, the communists killed 100 million people. Therefore, the communists are worse. Therefore, the communists are worse than the Nazis. But let's step back for a second. The Nazis had 12 years to kill 60 million people. The communists had about 80 years to kill 100 million people. They did less than twice the work in over 5 times the time. The Nazis killed 5 million people per year on average. The communists killed 1.25 million people per year. Only 1/4 the rate. Not that the communist numbers, right? Not that 1.25 million a year is acceptable. Just nowhere near as bad as people say. Just nowhere near as bad as the Nazis did. The only reason why the communists killed more was because they had much more time to do it, even though they were doing it much more slowly. And keep in mind that 30 million of the 100 million died during wartime to German, Japanese, and nationalist Chinese guns. So which really brings the communist numbers down to 70 million, which is only 875,000 per year. Still not acceptable. Still not acceptable, but nowhere near as bad. But nowhere near as bad as people claim it to be. And let's face it. The Russians and the Germans, they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones to have had committed genocides in their time. Ever since Europeans showed up in North and South America, the indigenous Indian population dropped 95%. That's pretty bad. So I think that's it. And just ask yourself, ask yourselves, who was in power during that time? What else was going on during that time? Don't just take information. Don't just take information and run with it, but relate it to other things. Compare it to other things.